Imagine, here's something to imagine, not being able to eat anything at all, not even take a sip of water, from the moment you wake up until at least 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Well, that's what millions of Muslims the world over are facing as the holy month of Ramadan gets underway later this week. It's a time of fasting, prayer and charity, and Imam Mohammed Rahman is a chaplain with the NHS in Sunderland and joins me now in the studio to talk about all three of those things. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. So early on a Sunday morning. It's just to say, when is early on a Sunday morning?
Exactly.
Before 9 o'clock is probably early. So Ramadan starts next week. Is it something you look forward to?
I think the holy month of Ramadan is something which I definitely look forward to, because for me it isn't just about abstaining from food or drink during the daylight hours, but it's also basically allowing me to become more spiritual, more attached to God, and really there are physical and spiritual benefits within the month of Ramadan. I mean, the month of Ramadan itself is one of many months within the Islamic year, and the Islamic year is based on the lunar cycle, and there are 12 months, and each month is either 29 or 30 days. So the holy month of Ramadan, depending on the sighting of the moon and when the actual lunar cycle starts within that particular month, it's either 29 or 30 days, and Muslims, they fast from dawn till dusk. And prior to fasting, or prior to dawn, or at the time of dawn, Muslims have what we call in Arabic suhoor. Now, the word suhoor basically refers to a pre-dawn meal.
And I suppose this is where we come to it, because it's the food aspect. Because I was just saying, the fasting thing, most of us wouldn't be out the last a few hours without a cup of tea. Never mind having to, from the moment you wake up until 9 or 10 at night, you can't eat anything. Yeah. You can't even drink water. Now, you would have thought, because we're always told you've got to stay hydrated through the day. Are there any health issues with not eating or drinking for so long, especially if you've got warm weather?
I think if you prepare yourself in regards to fasting well in advance with the right sorts of foods and fluids, for example, as we've just mentioned prior to me coming on air, about having porridge, having the right sort of foods before you start to fast, that allows you to basically keep up with the fast during the day, especially when it's to do with types of foods wherein the energy throughout the day is basically being released from the food itself. I do think that in terms of those who don't have a pre-dawn meal, or who aren't able to have any sort of drink or any sort of cereal or food for that matter before the time of fasting commences, it will be very difficult for those individuals throughout the day, and they'll feel thirsty, lethargic, dehydrated, etc. So there are physical benefits to fasting if you do prepare in advance, but more than that, there are many spiritual benefits within fasting. I think fasting isn't just about abstaining from food or drink, but because Islam is a very spiritual religion, many Muslims benefit spiritually from fasting as well. The idea that when you abstain from food or drink throughout the day, you're not just doing so because God has ordered you to do so, but you're doing so because you want to feel what it's like not to have food or not to have drink, and then appreciate God's bounties around you. And in doing so, then you attach yourself to your true origin, which is that you came from God, and that everything which is around you is in essence a representative of God's bounty, and hence why Ramadan is not just a month of patience, but it's also a month of gratitude as well.
So you've said it's not all about fasting, of course. There are nightly prayers at the mosque, and it's a very social time as well, because you have lots of community events.
There are many community events, there are many social events, especially when Muslims break their fast. Muslims congregate at mosques, restaurants everywhere. And it's a wonderful sight to see many people coming together and breaking their fast. In fact, this year within Newcastle there are two events taking place, and these two events are interfaith events for the community, wherein everyone will partake in the iftar, which is the breaking of the fast together, so that everybody can share within this wonderful experience.
So it's not just about fasting, it's not just about prayers either, because there's a charitable aspect to Ramadan as well, and it's a time when you're expected to think about others.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, The greatest charity is the charity of the heart. And when Muslims fast, the idea is that when you are fasting, not only are you abstaining from food or drink, but you have a sense of mercy and gratitude stemming from the heart, and once that happens, then you automatically and naturally will then want to help people around you, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. So, for example, food banks, helping people around the world, being charitable. You'll be amazed to find that there are many Muslims who are very charitable within the month of Ramadan, as opposed to any other year throughout throughout the year. And the reason being is because fasting causes one to then adopt a particular type of mentality, wherein one feels humble, grateful, but also acknowledging of others in terms of their situations, and that's why basically charity is a key aspect when it comes to
you mentioned
fasting.
a food bank there, because you run a monthly food bank, but also you set up an organisation called the Muslim Initiative.
Yes.
So what does that do?
So the Muslim Initiative was an organisation set up many years ago by myself and many of my colleagues within the local community. And the reason why we set this particular organisation up was to tackle, but also to enhance the educational and welfare needs of the local community. So, for example, those who were in need, for example, in order to access food banks, or in order to access food or clothing or money for that matter, we would provide avenues and channels for them to access, so that once they do access these channels, they're able to feel as though that they are being well looked after.
But that's not just for the Muslim community.
No, not at all.
It's
Not
the
at
whole
all.
community.
We say the Muslim Initiative, and the reason why we say the Muslim Initiative, especially in this day and age with all the things which are going on within the world, the idea is to show that Muslims aren't a different species of any sort, but we're human beings like everybody else, and that we are charitable like everybody else, and we want to be part and parcel of society, and hence why we call it the Muslim Initiative. So the Muslim Initiative is based on three principles: education, welfare, and social engagement. And based on these three principles, we have many activities which we conduct in order to represent these three principles, and one of them being from the principle of welfare, the food banks that we run on a monthly basis, but also in the month of Ramadan on a weekly basis.
So was there a specific need then in your local community for this to be set up? Because you would have, there are lots of charities around who help people in need.
Yeah.
So why did this organisation, why did you feel this particular organisation need, was it to plug a gap that wasn't being met by others?
I think it was to plug a gap which was not being met. Although there are many other Muslim organizations which pretty much do the same thing. But the idea behind setting up this organization was to enhance relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims in various aspects of people's needs. So social engagement, education, and welfare. I come from an interfaith background, especially traveling to Auschwitz and to Bosnia with Jews, Baha'is, etc. And what I wanted to do was to use that integration sort of element that was established many years ago with many of my colleagues from different faith backgrounds, and to allow their input within these particular aspects of what we wanted to do, so that when people looked at it from a broader perspective, it wasn't just that, yes, it's called the Muslim Initiative, it's all about Muslims. It's not just about that, but it's Muslims leading initiatives, moving forward, being progressive, being proactive, so that they can carry the community along with them, and that people can then understand that Muslims are here to benefit rather than the opposite.
So looking ahead then to Ramadan and this fasting, when do you actually start preparing for the fast itself? And are there any specific, because you mentioned there are certain foods you should eat, porridge will sustain you through and keep the hunger pangs at bay. Is there any foods that they're a no, you don't want to eat those before you're about to go?
I would definitely advise against binge eating on samosas and kebabs.
Is that because of the salt content?
The salt content, and it really doesn't give you as much energy as
you think it does.
In terms of porridge or a bowl of cereal or anything like that. I think, in all honesty, drinking as much water as one can prior to the commencement of fast is very important, because especially during the summer period, there are longer days, and I think hydrating oneself with enough fluids before the commencement of fast is important, but also with them, having types of foods, such as what I've mentioned there. Some people have dates, some people have yogurt, fruit. Some people even have rice and curry. I mean, in my house, especially when I was growing up, my mother always used to give me rice and curry, and I was sick of it, you know. And now I've been able to sort of change, you know, some of the foods that I normally have before commencing
So
fast.
building up to the start of the fast, is it then, do you have to maybe, I don't know, for maybe a week or a couple of weeks, would you prepare by maybe making your food portion smaller so you get used to eating less? Is that a trick, or?
Well, believe it or not, when people start to fast, especially within the first week, you wouldn't believe how many items there are on the table when people are eating at the pre-dawn meal. And slowly but surely, what then happens throughout the month is the items on the table start to decrease. And when that starts to decrease, then without a doubt, your intake
it's coming.
Exactly, starts to decrease as well.
Oh, well, that's Imam Mohammed Rahman. Thanks a lot for your
Thank you
time.
so much
Thanks
for
for
having me
coming.
today morning. Thank you.